Who is my mother? To answer who is my mother, I would initially answer the great Moabitess. Genetically, my mother's name is Rhea Urban. And, of course, she was born in Philadelphia. But initially, with my initial answer, the great Moabitess would be the mother of us all.
My biological mother was Vera Jackson. I've had many women in my life who have been mother figures to me, in that they've been teachers on one level or another. I've had my sisters. I'm the youngest one in the family, so all the older sisters were kind of like mothers to me. I've had aunts and other older relatives and friends and teachers who've all played a role in mothering me in my life. And some people weren't even related, but they've had an influence on me, you know, as far as mothering goes. They were teachers. My mother was not a religious person. The irony is that my father wanted us to be Roman Catholics, so they'd send the children to church, but neither one of them accompanied us. So they didn't teach us a whole lot about religion. They kind of relied on society to give us our religious upbringing. My own biological parents didn't teach me much of anything in terms of spirituality and religion. My mother was probably atheist. My father claimed to be a Roman Catholic, so they would send us to Catholic church. They didn't accompany us to church at all. So there wasn't any, you know, teaching as far as the biological parents were concerned.
The great Moabites having different children, breaking off into different tribes and populating different parts of the world, different parts of the earth. Hittites, Canaanites, Amorites, or whatever kind of other ites you want to point a finger at. They all came from the great Moabite mother. So I would say my mother would be the great Moabitess.
My mother is Allah. My mother is the creator of, you know, myself being in this earthly shell. So you could say she has a universal existence and a physical existence. She was in university when she was pregnant with me. So I think that has a lot to play with the whole study dynamic, you know what I mean, with regard to the issue of knowing thyself, that studying was something so natural. You know what I mean? Based on that, I think, personally. You know what I mean? Her being in that atmosphere, me being in that atmosphere, you know what I mean? We already know that the womb is the first school. So if the womb's the first school, and that's in a school, then, you know what I mean, the learning is gonna be something different, you know what I mean? A different level of learning.
My mother is the great Moabite woman. That is the political answer when asking someone that who their mother is. What that means is, what is your nationality? What is your political tie? As far as the principles of nationhood. So my mother is the Moabite woman from a political nationalistic perspective.
My mother is the one that gave me birth. She is now retired. She's a nurse by trade, but also a professional calypso singer, soca chutney singer in Caribe or Trinidad. And she's been doing that for many years. And she's still singing now, even though she's retired from nursing. I didn't grow up with my mother, so my parents split up when I was 4. And my mother went back to Caribe or Trinidad. We were located or stationed, or we lived domiciled in Montreal. And so my parents split up. My mother went back to Trinidad, and I grew up with my father. And growing up, I had very little contact with my mother. So it's only in recent years that through communication and going back to visit my mother that I learned a lot more about her, specifically last year, and her connection to me and her, if you want to say, esoteric philosophy. I wouldn't really say religious, but I'll say more spiritual philosophy then. And so she, excuse me, she studies the Hindu Devatas, as well as a little bit of the Key of Solomon, and she kind of dabbled in voodoo a little bit when I was younger, when she was around. But her philosophy is more spiritual because my opinion is she's an artist. And so religion or a fixed religion would be too confined for her.
My mother is Mocha El Bey, also known as Maida Jackson. She is Moabitess, born in what I call Canaan land, Canada.
Well, it depends on a layman. Like, my mother's Eudora McCletchy, as far as who brought me on this plane on the physical realm. But Allah, the mother of the universe. My mother, she's very spiritual, you know. She's always been, our family's always been quote-unquote religious, right? And when I came out of the church as well, growing up in Tobago, being in an Anglican church. So for the first 7 years of my life on this plane, I wasn't with her, you know. I was with my grandmother, my aunts, my uncles and stuff, while she was here trying to make ends meet. I was back in Tobago living, and when I got back with her in '84, when I was 7, that first completion, or that first stage, that first cycle, that 7 cycle. So when I got back with her, and then from then it's been a journey, you know. I mean, I still with my mother. I still stay with her, live with her. I feed off her energy, so that's maybe why, part of the reason why I'm at where I'm at today, because I've always got that guidance, and she's never really directed me on that level to this, verbally or consciously or physically or anything like that, but through her DNA, right? Because you could only be what your source is, right? Or what the seed is. So seed could only be what the source is. So she planted this seed, and it manifested this way. So now a lot of the things that I am about or I do now starts resonating with her, even though she never taught it to me. She did unwillingly or unknowingly, right? So, yeah. And we don't always see eye to eye. Sometimes I don't honor her the way I should. But she's the greatest being on this planet to me personally. So, all praise is due to Mom. You, they love you.
My mother's she's a thinker like me, you know, and a searcher. You know, Moors who are involved now tend to be people who search for knowledge. There are a lot of people searching for knowledge, I feel, and she grew up in the Catholic Church. You know, went to Catholic school, but around the time that I was born, she started studying Buddhism. She had looked into different religions as well, but since that time up till now, we still practice Buddhism. Buddhism is our spiritual practice. she showed me the power of being sincere in your faith. Because growing up, we didn't always have much, but whenever she wanted something or we wanted something, she always advised us to chant about it.
My mother is Mosumade, Ade from Keonik Binde, and that's my birth mother. But as far as the political answer to it would be the great Moabite mother, because we're all descendant of her, we're all children of her. Growing up, I was raised as a Christian by her, and I remember having a book. It's called My Little Book of Bible Stories, a little yellow book. So I'm very familiar with the Bible stories, and while I was incarcerated, I read up on the Bible. So I'm very familiar with the Bible as far as what I was raised up on. And but for the most part, I was just with the quote-unquote religion, that I was raised on. I was just taught about hell. That you go to hell. That's pretty much the bottom line. So for me, that really didn't. That was, I guess, the hook, line, and sinker of it all, for that religion for me. But I don't think it made me any better of a person or worse of a person,
My mother is Mary Edna Gibson Rice, South Carolina.
Lena Ruth is my mother.
Who are the individuals that are shedding light on the science? I know quite a few of them make mention of certain stuff. One person who wasn't really shy about saying things, or who didn't really bite his tongue much, was Wesley Snipes. Wesley Snipes talked about more science. He came right out and said, "This is who I am and this is what I do." But his actions show a lot. I have a friend. I don't want to mention her name on camera. She's a songwriter, and she lives in Los Angeles. And she's written music for some of the biggest stars that we know of. And she tells me about these stories of times when they're in the studio, and they actually have these conversations about nationality, about birthright, about heritage and culture. And the issue with them is the finance that they're making. They don't want to give up their contracts. Now you see their football players. Antoine Randall L., he played for Pittsburgh Steelers. And, right across the back of his jersey is his title.
J Electronica, Mariah Carey, Nick Cannon, they're one of their children's names Morocco. They had a Morocco room in their house and all that type of stuff. If you check Sprague Benz, well-known, prominent reggae artist. He had a movie an independent movie called Green Card that he came out with, where they were dropping the science in that movie. Of course, you have, Beyonce. She had more in her video. Lupe Fiasco had Moors in his video. In the Prodigy book, he's talking about he studied the Moors. The Prodigy Hegelian album, talking about etymology and, maritime laws, not the law of the land and all that. So there's people out there that's putting it out, but there's so much of the other stuff that, the truth gets shrouded, in the lies. But the information is out there as far as like entertainers, movies. You look at Morgan Freeman, always played God, always plays some type of position where you have to wonder, like, you know what I mean? Like what, like why is he in this movie playing this type of position again? You know what I mean? Every movie he plays some top, you know, level Asiatic that has some superior knowledge than everybody else. Even if you look at like Liar Liar, you know what I mean? Like the straight, Jim Carrey straight telling you, don't trust lawyers. Same thing that Morris be telling people. You know what I mean? So there's a few out there. Even if you go to, we were just talking about Godfather with the fezzes when they're coming in to the country and all that stuff. You know what I mean? There's so many examples, but people just have to look for them and they'll find it, no doubt.
Taj Civic Bey been, you know, my teacher, and he's been involved for over 30 years. Yourself, Setenvar Bey, Cujo, Il, Vasmavaya, Anae, Mizraim, Hakeem Bey, Commit to You, Bey. But some of the few who have been shedding light over the years on this in regards to our history, Moorish history, our nationality, our birthright, our European colonization and occupation of our Moorish land. All right, so those are just a few natural persons who have been shedding light over the years.
I would have to say, you know, Nick Cannon for one. I've seen an interview with him when he was on, can't remember the name of the show, and there's a bunch of women around him, and they were questioning his turban, and one of them said, oh, it's Sikh, and he actually said, no, it's Moorish, my Moorish side and the history and so on and so forth. Now, he didn't go very deep, but the fact that he said Moorish, and then the woman that said Sikh brought up the Sikh thing again, it was kind of like she's trying to push a perspective of it's Sikh and not Moorish. So I think he's one. I've seen a video of Lupe Fiasco. Can't remember the name of the song, but it was shot in Chicago, and there was a scene of Moors, and I believe having the flag, the Moorish flag as well in that video, in the beginning of the video. So I would think he's on it, as well as Yassin Bey, obviously. I mean, he proclaimed his nationality and corrected his appellation. So other than that, we get information or examples of certain people that know about it. Noriega mentioned Noble Jew Ali in a rhyme just recently for his Drink Champs podcast. You've heard Ghostface Killer say he's the black Noble Jew Ali. Nas as well mentioned Noble Jew Ali. So the information is out there, but it seems as though the only one that really decided to take that full-on step forward is Yassin Bey.
People that are shedding light on the science right now, from my perspective, to be honest, the majority of the people who are in the spotlight, in the mainstream, in entertainment, politics, I don't think that people in a world of 7 billion reach a height where they're broadcast to a large audience, especially a North American audience, Northwest of Mexico, without having that deeper understanding. It's like, it's not necessary, but I know that it prepares people to go to another step, if that step's available. You know, so it's like being, as they say, being 2 steps ahead, being prepared. And if you don't have the science, then it's easier when you have the science. It's easier when you know this particular body of knowledge that we call Moorish science. It makes things better. It facilitates your development. It facilitates you being, you know, maybe not so well known to becoming very well known. It may be surprising that I might say that, because it's not everybody who says I'm a Moor. But I know certainly, definitely, that there are many people shedding light. I think that Jay-Z is shedding light. I think that Will Smith is shedding light. Yasin Bey is shedding light. Obama shed light. Castro shed some light.
Who are the individuals shedding light on the science that might not be in the light, shedding the light on the science? That's a good one. There's many. Like you mentioned a few who people know already, but you dropped one on me the other day, you know. So I might as well drop him, because a lot of people probably don't know that he's on it too. A man like David Banner, right? A man like David Banner, who had a run where he was a well-known artist and had hits and whatnot. Now he's probably just behind the scenes doing his thing. Another reason maybe because of that fact, because once you start dealing with certain things and you delve into certain sciences, you're going to start getting shunned, right? Depending on what angle you're dealing with it from. If you're doing it how they want you to do it, then you probably get more light or more shine. But when you're dealing with it from the real perspective, or the way it was meant to be, you're probably going to get blacklisted and a lot of those things. So, another person that I could say who probably went through it, and people probably know, is Wesley. But he's probably doing it on a Wesley Snipes on a different level, and where it's not vocal, but you could just tell by the way things are going in the actions that, he has a level of awareness. And because of that level of awareness and him trying to put that into play, all the roadblocks and the blockages presented there. So there's a lot more, but it's a good question, because right now I wanted to drop a exclusive one, but it can't come to mind right now. But yeah.
Well, for me, the individual shedding light on the science, first and foremost, I have to say Kevin Gates. I was actually on Instagram Live with him, and he's a firm knower, knowing, like he was firm, adamant that his children are raised not to say that they're black. So, Sprague Benz is another person. He's out there doing his thing. Mos Def, of course, J Electronica, Smith & Wesson, shout out General Steel, and I don't know. Oh, Nick Cannon, he's another one. But yeah, there's a few that are shedding light. Nas talks about Noble Drew Ali, So yeah, there's a few, and you could even say Jay-Z with Rock Nation. Just think about the name Rock Nation,
Taj Tariq Bey, Anna E, Raz Braya, Mizraim, Sheikh Kujo, Asim Bey, Seton Ra, my new son.
Who are the individuals who shed light on science to me? Daria, who many people know now is Prime Minister Daria Bey. I met her taking my son to the babysitters. And I remember her brother crashed her car. And at that time, I was doing my contracting business on a larger scale. And I had about 5 cars. So I had a golden Eldorado and it's one of my cars. And so I had a job going on, actually on the side of the bridge on Green Street, and I had a job going on in down in Cinnaminson, New Jersey, and one down Flemington. And I used to come at or leave early at work, wherever I might be, to go pick up my son Taj. I had my baby Taj. And that's where I had met her. And she would bring her daughter there, Takesha. And for convenience, you know, we started talking. And for convenience, I just let her use that car. And she would pick up my son, Taj. And that took care of the problem of her not having transportation. I wouldn't have to leave work. And then later on, it seemed something familiar with her. And then I remembered that I used to cut her hair. And because my family's barbers. And we had a barbershop on Haddon Avenue in Camden. And then I remember she used to have this big, big afro, like perfect shaped afro, and I used to cut her hair. And then I remembered her, and that's how it became more and more friendly. Then I discovered in her family's been in the temples since like the early teens. Like even, and some of her family were conscious even before the Moorish movement started, as you already understand. It's a bloodline. It's a history. But a lot of the Asiatics, you know, would not necessarily talk openly because of the suppression. And so a lot of different Asiatics would hide behind the name Indian in order to protect the culture, knowing that they're not Indians, but that's to get along. But anyway, she was one who introduced me to literature, Prophet Noble. And so we have a long history with that. And also end up later having a son with her, whom I delivered. You know, and so that's been our bond ever since, you know. But she's the one that delivered Jawali's literature to me. But when I went into that literature, you know, when I went in and I came back out, it was like warrior.
How was I introduced to the science, to more science? It was through, I would say, Asir the Duke of Tears. So this was back in 2011 when I was struggling to find constant work in my field. And I thought to myself, there's got to be a spiritual explanation about it. So I started doing some research, and I told myself, you know, I don't want to hear anything from any Europeans. I want to hear my people speaking about it. And it's just no disrespect to Europeans. It's just that whenever you hear about spiritual wisdom or something, it's always Europeans talking about it. So I just started doing some research, and I think one of the first videos I came across on YouTube was from this beautiful Asiatic sister. I can't remember what her name was. And she was just talking more about astrology and stuff. I'm like, okay, I was always interested in astrology. Listened a little bit, and then I clicked further. And I came up on Alim Bey, and I watched a couple of his videos. It was in a setting where it's a dark setting, and he's writing something on a whiteboard. I watched a couple of his videos, and I came across Hakim Bey, the original. And I watched some of his Moorish paradigm videos, and I was hearing this Moorish stuff, and I didn't know what it was. And then I came across Asir the Duke of Tears, and he said, I think it was a video or a podcast. No, I think it was a video. And he said something to the effect of, if the Creator created man in the likeness of himself, and we were the first people on the planet, what does that say about us? And then the second thing he said, if the sun is the giver of life on the planet, and the sun gives us energy, what does that say about us? And so those two things just got me thinking, okay, this guy, something super simple and super deep. And then I started listening more and more to his videos and podcasts, and he was talking about this Moorish thing. Didn't know what it was, so I actually sent him an email, because he always left his email at the end of videos and podcasts. And he sent me his number. He said to give him a call. And I called him, and he said, "Oh, you're in Germany. You're in Nuremberg." He said the Moorish influence there is huge. So just take a walk around the city and see what you find. And I had already been domiciling in Nuremberg for 2011, say 7 years. 2003, 11, yeah, 7 years, 8 years, 8 years. And I've walked past certain monuments every single day, and I didn't know what it was. And there was a Moorish pharmacy there. There's coat of arms with Moorish heads on it all over the city. There's different beers with Moorish insignia on it and stuff like that. So that's what got me into the science. And then I started just taking more and more classes from him, because his knowledge and wisdom seemed pretty extensive, and it was very extensive. I would say the science, I can't really say the science opened up my eyes to things I didn't see before. It was more so it ignited what was already inside of me. Because when I started learning, especially about the fact that we were already in the Americas long before the so-called slave trade, that made sense to me. Because growing up, you always heard the story that we came across the Atlantic in the slave trade, and that for some reason just never sat right with me. I didn't know why, but it just didn't sit right. And then when I found out that we were already here, that just made a whole bunch more sense to me. And so learning about the science, I would say, just validated all these different feelings that I had when I was younger. Prime example would be, like I said, Christianity didn't make sense to me. But then when I heard about Islam, it made more sense to me in the aspect of Islam says that Muhammad, peace be upon him, was a prophet. Jesus, peace be upon him, was a prophet. And all these I would say special, if you want to say, religious people were prophets. Whereas Christianity said Jesus was the Son of God and the only Son of God. So that to me made more sense to me, that all of them are prophets. However, the only example of Islam that I had was the Nation of Islam. And to me, growing up, they were just too extreme, talking about the quote-unquote white man is the devil and stuff. I was just never really into that.
Well, for me, after being in prison and just seeing the scheme behind religion per se, because you find that there's a lot of people, you know, for example, there's guys who become Muslim in prison just for safety reasons, you know what I mean? Stuff like that. Like, people have their ulterior motives as far as just trying to, you know, reach a higher height, you know, most people anyways, you know, and then you have people who are just, you know, going through the motions. But so when I got out of prison, a good friend of mine, Yasun, asked me to come to a class. He sent me a text, I remember. It was shortly after I got out, and he said, you should come to this class. And I was like, for sure. Went through, got put on to the science, and ever since then, it's been on. And it's crazy because there are people who I know. While I was in prison, like after I came out, I went to, like, naturally, after I got into some information, some of the people that I know, you know, were never really been locked up, and I've known them for years, and I'm like, hey, listen, this is what's going on. And one of them actually told me, yeah, you know, he knew about it. He actually went to one class out in, I think, Alton Towers in 2007. In 2007, I was still in the pen, serving a life sentence, and, you know, a life sentence. But I was just flabbergasted, and like you just got into you went to class and never really gravitated to it. I don't know. But I guess when you look at it, school in general, people are in school just to get what they need and get out. You know what I mean? Like just regular institutionalized school. So I guess it's no different here, where it's like, if you're not passionate about it, you're not passionate about it. You know, but as soon as I got into the science, it was a no-brainer for me.
How was I introduced to the science? I was at a club one night, and it was out with me and my cousin, and when the club let out, there was a food truck outside. And we went outside and we conversating with another couple guys that worked at a different club. And the guy that was running the food truck, you know, we started talking about certain things and he overheard us. So the 5 of us ended up gathering in front of his food truck. This was maybe about 3 a.m. And we stayed there until about 5:30. And we talked about a whole multitude of different things. You know, Rex 84, King Alfred Plan, just a whole bunch of stuff. AFRICOM and the Federal Reserve. So this guy mentions to me, he said, listen, he said, I got somebody you should meet. He said, my neighbor, his name is Taj Tariq Bey. And initially, you know, I hadn't heard of Taj Tariq Bey or any other. I had heard the title Bey before, just not really, I wasn't really informed on what it was or anything about it. So with him telling me I should meet this guy, I did some research. And I found out, okay, this dude Taj Tariq Bey is here in Philly, and he does classes. So I went down to Black and Nobel, which is a bookstore where they did the classes, and I actually missed that one. I went down maybe a Monday or Tuesday. Class was that Saturday. And the next one was going to be at a different location, so I went to that class. And when I got there, I was fortunate enough to meet Taj Tariq Bey, Abdullah Il-Talik Mosi Bey, and Ras Mariah V. Bey from RV Bey Publications, and her son, Ms. Raim Alafel. And that class was actually my introduction into Moorish science.
How was I introduced to the science? That's a good question. It's kind of hard to pin it down, but at one point, I think I was seeking again. I knew something wasn't right? I knew in terms of nationality and things like that, it wasn't right. And things started to be presented to me. So I think going to Afrofest, there were different booths and different people that were out there. And that's when I got in touch with Cujo and, you know, the temple here in Canaan land. So I started going to class from then. Yeah, so it was just from going to Afrofest and encountering the people there and liking what they had to say and wanting to find out more.
How was I introduced to the science? Some brothers out here by the name of One Love, they brought a brother by the name of Umar Shabazz out here, and he wrote a book called We Are the Washita. And when I saw that lecture, it confirmed to me that I knew that something was up with regard to calling myself black and all these things. From there, we got into, you know, watching things by Brother Aleem El Bey. He was probably the second influence that we had. We did a lecture with him here. He drove here from North Carolina, or traveled here from North Carolina, using his Moorish tags and all that. He had his own plates when he came up here. Then we figured that, you know, well, I figured that it's time to go deeper into this. What's the foundation of this? Found out about Noble Drew Ali through MySpace. Went to Chicago to visit a Moorish science temple out there, and the Moors there put us on to everything with regard to what Noble Drew Ali brought and what the Moorish Divine and National Movement and the Moorish Science Temple is about. And ever since that, you know what I mean, we're still here doing what it is we do, making sure our people know the truth about their nationality and birthrights.
Taj Tariq Bey's cousin, Jamal, when I was a student, graduate student at Rutgers University, Graduate School of Social Work. This was in 1992 when he gave me something that Taj had written called the Freedom Package. And I was still in school at the time. I didn't have much clarity on it. And so that was my first introduction to it. And I eventually met Taj in October 1993. And that was a Friday. And at that time, he taught roundtable class on Fridays and Sundays. And so I attended that class that night. And from that day on, I've been doing just been very active in this Moorish movement as to help uplift fallen humanity, to bring our people back into the constitutional fold of government.
How was I introduced to the science? So I'll say on two parts. When I was very young, I was given a perspective that is very congruent with Moorish science from a Moorish Science Temple perspective. I was taught that not to focus on my complexion, even though we would think that it's important to remember the struggle of black people and remember your complexion when you're doing things. Instead, I was taught that that is something to be aware of, but that what's inside your head is the most important thing. So, I just want to mention that there's an important book to me that kind of introduced me a little bit, like opened me up to the science, and that was The Moors in Spain by Stanley Lane Poole. The message got me, and basically I Googled Noble Drew Ali. I've never heard this name before. So if Nas is mentioning this dude, I'm like, who is this guy? I Googled it, and I'm not sure. I can't say for sure what came up, but I do know that I got a little bit of online information, a little bit more over the next, say, a few weeks or whatever. I was still in school. I think probably by that summer I had a little bit more time on my hands. And I said to myself, well, if there's this temple that this brother has established and he teaches Moors their birthrights and their nationality and so forth, I want to go check it out. So I went online and I looked up to see, Moors in Toronto, temple in Toronto, whatever. I, Googled it, and eventually I realized that there was a temple, and they did classes. So I went to my first class. I believe it was in Scarborough at a library. I think it's the library anyway, it's in Toronto in Scarborough. And then from there, at that time we were using different spaces. So that was my introduction, and from there I met Cujo, I met Adisa, and the other people, members of the temple later on.
Well, my introductory to the science, I could be a little egotistical to say that it was always meant to be, because if there was some type of late introductory, then I deal with things on a level where things are ordained. Like, yeah, you could change the course of stuff, but things are destined. So I wouldn't have been where I'm at today. I wouldn't be sitting in front of this camera right now if I was introduced to that at some point, like late in my life. So I could say this was always in me. I was introduced to it from my mother and her mother and her mother's mother. But if you want the layman answer, then more or less you could say 2005, 2006, I was given a audio CD of Muta Baruka, as a Jamaican activist, and he has a talk show, a radio show, controversial radio show a lot of people fight against. So he dropped a little lecture DVD. It's called The Real History of Slavery. So throughout the lecture, it mentions the name Moor. So now in 2008, when I was released from captivity, after doing a year and a half or so, it was my time to reconnect with my true identity. So Granchi Kujo Adjo L, which is my cousin through blood, his father and my mother are brother and sister. Our corporate last name is McCletchy, which has an MC, which already has the tie to the Moorish lineage. So then he came and gave me some info, gave me some Taj, a few DVDs, but so happened to be the first one that I watched was a Taj one, Driver's License Fraud, Part 1 and 2. After that, it was over. It was easy for me to like embrace this. I didn't have to like question, try to go back and forth with it for a while to see if this is what I wanted to do. From the minute he said and gave me the DVDs and I watched it, it made total sense to me.
I came through, I've been through many schools of thought. And I was, at that time, Nubian. And we were told that we were Moors. And it was very interesting. We got books, we got tapes, and just went in. I was told, somebody asked me who I am. I was a babe at that time. I took it. But we're not Negro, black, or color. Moor. We are Moors. Then somewhere along the line, in a few years, I got this message that we're not Moors. And where did that come from? You can't take a Moor back from all the studying I did once I was told I was a Moor. We even had the Circle 7. I knew about Noble Drew Ali name. I didn't know about Noble Drew Ali and all that I've learned now. So the separation came. And I was told about the classes here at the York House. And there, and I had more to study. I mean, Roz comes with the books. I listen to the YouTube. There's just so much information that I just tell everybody I'm on this high now because I always loved history. I mean, I was in school getting B's and C's in English, but the history was like, but it wasn't really history from what I'm learning now. I just got their stories. So, yes, that's where I am. I'm a Moorish high flight.
Why do I think this information has yet to be embraced by my peers? I say mainly, you could say as simple as many are called and the few have chosen, right? We used to say are chosen, but the few have chosen. Because a lot of people I know, they know the science, but it's, even when you were getting into like certain other faiths, as far as Rastafari, that pretty much rooted in Christianity and founded in Catholicism, like it said to do certain things, so certain aspects of your life you have to let go of, which is very hard for certain people to do because doing what you are comfortable doing, what you're accustomed to doing, is easy because it flows. Now you have to change your whole thinking. You have to change your whole mind state. The way you do everything. It's difficult. Right? The higher self and lower self battle is a constant struggle. But you have to know how to balance the two. But some people they don't want the responsibility of taking responsibility. Right? And stepping up to the plate and saying, you know what? I have a duty to do to uplift fallen humanity. I have a duty to uplift my people and make sure that the next 4 generations don't go through the same thing we're going through. And our melanin is such a absorber of everything. So the stuff that they're sending out to mess with us, some of us, it's getting into our system, calcifying our pineal even more, and we can't wake up out of that sleep, right? That conscious sleep, that constant sleep that has us unconscious. We can't wake up out of it. So there's some, like I said, that's the most simplest way to say it. Many are called, because enough of us are called, enough of us know this, enough of us gravitate to it. But there's levels. You know, there's ones that they're here, they're just here. It's like, okay, to go back to your life. There's ones that hear, and they might come to class for a second and listen, and then go back to their life. There's ones that hear and think it's going to serve a purpose to them, so they come, get what they think they need, and then they're gone. There's ones that hear, become fully delved into it, love it, and then something about something or someone rubs them wrong, and they take that personal thing and they associate it with the whole movement, and then they leave. And then there's ones like us, who no matter what happens, we're going to be here, and we're going to stay here and make sure that we do our part, or we leave something for the next, so they could continue to do their part in line with what Prophet Noble Drew Ali left. Because that's all that matters, right? And once we could tap into the minds of the woman, doesn't matter what happens next, because once we're clean intellectually, everything spiritually, emotionally, then everybody else will come out the way they're supposed to come out, and then we won't have to do no work. But until then, yeah, it's going to be a constant battle, and there's going to be way more of us that don't gravitate to this because it's easier. It's so much easier not to.
These things, I think, is the fear aspect, what we call false education appearing real. So because of fear, because of people being bombarded with false info, when they get the truth, it really doesn't resonate with them in their mind, because they're so like they've been trained so much to not deal with the truth. They've been trained so much to accept the lies, to accept the things that are illusions, and not deal with reality, that when we present this to them, it's not anything that really clicks. Now, on the other hand, if they get a ticket, if they want to vaccinate their children and they don't want it done, trust me, they know who the Moors are, and they're going to call the Moors to get whatever it is that they want. You know what I mean? Somebody sends them a tax letter, they know to call the Moors. But when it comes to, I guess, looking at this more than your personal whatever is where people have the issue, because they only see this as being able to get out of something.
My peers are people in my age group. And the truth is that this information is the most crucial, perhaps not to them, but to their children and their grandchildren. Of course, it would be good if they embrace it for the benefit of their grandchildren and their children, as an added benefit. But I think the key is that those generations get this information and are able to make decisions for themselves, and are able to analyze it for themselves objectively. The information has been put aside. It's been distracted and by other things. Also, the power of the information. The power of the information lies in different organizations and groups and endeavors that go by other names. So it's like anything that has things, has assets, has power, has economy behind it. If that energy is taken by someone else or by some other entity and given another name, but still really belongs to where it came from, over time people will come to think of that thing as only having what it only has. In reality, Moorish sciences from the 20th century, from Noble Drew Ali, spread and gave birth to the Nation of Islam, to the 5% nation of gods and earths. People say when you talk about going to college or university and taking your initial course, the initial course in a particular line of courses, a particular field of study, your first course is your 101. You know, that's Drew Ali. When people talk about the United Nations and the declarations and so on and so forth, the Pan American Conference precedes the United Nations. And Drew Ali came there with a message, even before Selassie. Peace be upon him and all honor. But when Noble Drew Ali established this movement and initiated the revival of our culture and our heritage as it is, he established it for particular generations. He was looking at particular generations, and those generations are only just being born. So in a way, I feel like if those of us, you know, in 2017 AD right now who are involved, it's not that we're involved in something that is necessarily weak. We're involved in something that is actually very strong and going to grow very, very, very strong. But we're early. And it's just a matter of timing. It's not a matter of power or acceptance. It will be accepted. There is no doubt. To me, it's a timing thing. We're early, and so yes, our peers may not accept it. They may never accept it, but if they live a long life, they will see it. They will see it grow.
Well, fear is a big part, and also, you know, miseducation and confusion is part of it. But fear is the biggest part, because people have, to really declare your nationality is to say, you know what, I want to take control. And a lot of people, whether they realize it or not, even if you have a job and whatnot, you rely on the system. And that thought of just even your job alone, or traveling without a quote-unquote license, like, these things are kind of daunting for some people. So I understand that, you know, I understand. But with that being said, there's no excuse, because evil prevails, even when good people are quiet. And running around mislabeling yourself as quote-unquote Negro, black, colored, it's misrepresentation, you know? And this is why we, quote-unquote, black people suffer the way they do, especially in North America, even around the world. Look at it. Even when you have, quote-unquote, government that's dark skin or black, look at these other places. It's no better than here. That's run by the European, pale-skinned European. So it is what it is. It's fear. Bottom line is fear.
I don't think it's not exactly that. But my honest feeling is that that's not exactly a true question for what it represents. I think a lot of people are not as courageous as they would like to admit to be, and a lot of people are compromised. A lot of people are more interested in imagery or people that they're connected with and don't want to admit what they know in their heart to be true. So the embracing has more to do with compromise, denial, and a few lacking information. But I think that would be a safe and a fair assessment. Because it actually doesn't take long for people to recognize the truth in it, particularly when you're dealing with facts. As an example, as many of you know, when I was in the Nation of Islam, we came through the ranks quite quickly. And so most of my friends, just like we're sitting right here, sharing with each other, is no different than me sitting home with Muhammad Ali and other celebrities in my house holding my babies. So I have a different view than a lot of other people have who may look at the Nation of Islam. You understand, from whatever view they may have. And I recognize more realistic and more pragmatic views when you're in the circles of what you call Privy Council persons. So, meaning like the views that I recognize that believers have or they're developed under is not necessarily the views that ministers and people in the circles have. It's almost like, in some ways, like changing masks or faces. Like when we're here, we're real. It's what it is, and sort of like going on stage, and then this image or belief that I didn't exactly see, like say in private conversations, pretty much everybody knew that the Temple of Allah, which is later the Temple of Islam, is an offshoot of the Moorish Zion Temple of America. But I also noticed that in public, no one want to talk about it that way. They don't want to acknowledge the connections, stuff like that. And there's other experiences that kind of made me discouraging, whereas I stepped off. And I suppose in many instances it's along the same lines as Clarence, Malcolm, John, Wallace, and others who learn different truths, and it's according to where your heart is and where your truth is, how your sense of self-integrity, how long you can stand in the face of certain hypocrisies.
Why do I think this information has yet to be embraced by my peers? Honestly, I think it's because of too much misinformation. Too many people have ideas about who we are and what it is that we do. A lot of times when you hear about Moors on television, it's usually something negative. It's usually, and that's how it is with us. That's that eugenic movement, to show us in a negative light. They ain't going to show us in a positive light. That eugenic movement is just their scientific way of making us look worse than what we are. So when people hear about, quote unquote, what they call a sovereign movement, they connect us to that sovereign movement. And people just got a lot of misinformation. All we're doing is trying to get over on the law. All we're trying to do is get over on the government. We don't want to pay bills. We don't want to pay taxes. And of course that information has been put out there, but that information is not the bottom line. I think if people really got the truth about nationality and birthright, if people understood the true science of Islam, if people understood that the reason we say and do the things we do is because we've been taken advantage of. The same thing that they say that we're trying to do, take advantage of the system, we've been being taken advantage of, walked on and stomped on for years. And because people look at it a certain way and not the true way or the actual way things are because they don't know, then they have this perception. And the perception is, if I, quote unquote, become a Moor, then I'm going to get in all kinds of trouble. I'm going to lose my job and things of that nature. So for that reason, I think people shy away from it. And that's why it has yet to be embraced by most of our peers.
It's a mixture of a bunch of things. I don't think it's as easy to say that it's fear-based. I really don't think that's easy. I think there is the comfort of the status quo, and the comfort of, okay, well, if I go this route, it's going to take a lot of work. There's a lot of studying that needs to be done, and I just want to live my life. I just want to relax. I just don't want all that drama or the headache of studying something so intensely. So I think there's a mixture of a bunch of things. And I think it's also growing up in a system, so just the aspect of saying, I'm not an adjective, I'm not black. It was so easy for me to pick that up because it just made sense. To the point where now when I hear people saying, yeah, this black person, this, I cringe inside. But then for other people, you tell them that and it just kind of, oh, yeah, okay. And then 2 minutes later, they go on speaking that way. So I think that it's really hard to explain. I think there's a bunch of different elements going on. I can't really say it's fear-based. I think there's a comfort level. It's what you've been raised on. And also, it could be as well not really comprehending what being a Moor is, maybe. And I don't like saying being a Moor because it seems as though you're changing into something. No, you are a Moor. So I think there's a whole bunch of different elements, but I think one of the main things is the comfort issue and not wanting to break out of that. I don't really think it's fear-based because I think there's not enough information that they have to be fear-based, if that makes any sense.
That's a really good question. And from experience, I guess I can tell you, when we say peers, I'm assuming we're talking about people that you associate with on a day-to-day basis. I've just recently retired, but before that I was working. And, you know, I think one of the reasons is that people are kind of complacent. A lot of the times, if they figure I've got a job, it's okay. You know, there are some perks, etc., etc. So why rock the boat? In other words, if it ain't broke, then I don't need to fix it. They don't realize that it's broke, right? So they figure everything is okay. You know, we live in a free country where we get to work. We're treated pretty well by society as a whole. But in reality, from where I'm standing, it's not that way. You know, this is not the reason we're supposed to be here. We're not supposed to go and work 35 years for someone else. You know, that's not why we're here. It doesn't really honor our lives. It doesn't honor our ancestors. And I think, honestly, I think that we're supposed to be doing something a whole lot better and a whole lot more with our lives for the time that we have here. So the reason a lot of people don't really, they're not that, like you said, it doesn't resonate with them or they don't embrace it, is because they don't feel the need for it. Their back is not against the wall. But why should our backs have to be against the wall before we start to stand up and do what we're supposed to do, right? Why should we?
Well, there has not been, this Moorish movement was established in 1913. You're looking at about 104 years ago. There's been several dynamics. Ali said, in order to change people, must change their literature. Unfortunately, there have not been that much production of literature. We were talking about those that came before us, where we can go to Barnes and Nobles or B. Dalton's or any other bookstore to purchase, you know, books, pamphlets written on Moorish history, culture, philosophy. It just has not been done. There has not been the distribution. The newspaper called the Moorish Guide that Ali established, you know, is no longer in publication. It was only in publication for a few years. So that was because of COINTELPRO. It's one of the factors where the Moorish Science Temple was infiltrated through the operation of COINTELPRO. So you have that dynamics have taken place. So there has not been, you know, as I see it, a great deal of public dispensation of literature and just public being out there in the public, in the mainstream. So therefore, it hasn't taken root to the point where it is known in the mainstream. Though we have the social media, but we're talking about mainstream.
I feel that a lot of my peers, and I talk to a lot of folks, are very fearful from the negative things that they've heard. They've heard that, being a Moor is a church, a religion. It's not for real. All that Moor stuff will get you locked up. I said, but, did you study anything? Did you read anything? You're going by hearsay. You have to find out things for yourself. And that's where my life has been. Find out things for yourself. And ask questions. And the questions I ask, the answers don't a lot of times come from a person. I'm led to answers. Because sometimes I call folks up and they're busy but I'm just led to information. And I know that for a fact that this is true. And I still run and tell the folks. I tell them, they're looking at me like, okay, it's all right, and I'm fine with it.
When did I realize that this information was the truth? To be perfectly honest with you, it was at my very first class. It was initially, I'm trying to remember who went first. I'm thinking Abdullah Iltali Mosi Bey spoke first, and then Taj Tariq Bey spoke after him. Abdullah talked about the origin of the word nigger and the distortion of the word of the snake, not the word, but the distortion of the image of a snake. And as Abdullah was talking more and more about the distortion of the snake and how connotatively it points to something negative or deceitful or an ill-willed individual, he talked about the actual reverence of the snake and how important the snake was in our culture and how it was a symbol of wisdom and intelligence. And I'm like, wait a minute. Like, I just came from Mexico and there's snakes everywhere, and how they embrace the snake, and you got statues of snakes' hair and pictures of snakes' hair and all of this other stuff, and it was just making so much sense to me. But when Ty spoke about quote unquote the black man versus the Moor, and when I heard him going into the scientific breakdown of why we're not black, it just resonated with me, bro. It made so much sense that at that moment I knew that I would not ever call myself, you, or the next person black ever again. Especially being one who studied quote unquote black history long before I even knew about Moorish science. To know that at the turn of the century we were called colored, and then from colored we were called Negro, and then from Negro we were called black, and then from black we got the moniker African American. It wasn't hard for me to grasp on what they were saying, and then when he opened up the dictionary and just showed the etymological background of the word black and how it didn't go back before a certain year, it was ironic, man, that he was saying all of this and I had read all of the stuff that I studied and read before, with all of these different monikers we were given. It just made too much sense, and it was no way that I could look at it, read it, and understand it and move away from it. So that was my introduction, and that was when I knew what I was hearing was the truth, and I just fully embraced it.
When did I realize that this information was the truth? Was there a time or incident? Yeah, exactly what I answered a few questions back. When you asked me, when was I introduced to it? With my cousin, Kudro Adrael, Grand Sheik of Canaan Temple, Subordinate Temple number 5. When he brought that info to me, that's when it was easy. I studied for like a year or more, just reading DVDs, whatever. There was classes. I never went to one class. So and the first class wasn't even a class. The first thing I went to was our first annual Juali Day. And that's when I met other Moors and seeing what was going on. And from then, we started having other classes. But it was just, for me, things, like, I don't got to read a book to know something's true. There's certain parts of me that there's no blockage, and the ancestors give me signals. So once I feel it, like Bob Marley said, who feels it knows. Enough time I feel it, so that's how I know. So I didn't have to, there's nothing really. It was easy. Easy as 1, 2, 3.
When did I realize this information was the truth? I had I got a stop. I got pulled over on the 401 by OPP. I had expired tags. I had expired license. And I had Moorish nationality paperwork in the glove that I never used before. I just used to have it in there. And when he pulled me over, like, that was it. It was either you're given the license that's expired, plates expired, getting kidnapped right here on the highway, or give these papers, see what happens. So I said, okay, forget it. I'm just giving the papers. Gave him the papers, went back to the car, did the call, came back, said, you know what I mean, here's your stuff back. We're gonna get your private automobile off the public highway. So they shut the highway down, escorted me off the highway, parked up. All these different cars came. We're sitting there building on it. In the end, the highwayman or police gave me a pink paper and told me, tell the driver that his license is suspended. No tickets, no tow the car, no anything. They also told me that the municipal police are not as lenient as they are. So make sure I'm very careful with exercising what I exercise with them, with the local Roman soldiers. But I think that was one of the highlights for me that made me realize that, yeah, this is real.
I think one of the moments was when I got my fez and I actually put it on for the first time. There was an indescribable feeling. There was like, it was a feeling of newness, a feeling of familiarity, a feeling of exaltedness, a feeling of embarrassment, but embarrassment more so of the attention that you'd get for wearing it, not really, nothing really, if you want to say negative. All these different things mixed up in one. And I remember, because I got it, and I never really, I received it in the mail, and I never really wore it until I had to take my passport picture. And then I remember putting it on and walking down the street with it for the first time to the passport office to get my pictures taken. And all these feelings were running through me, but for some reason, it felt like I was walking taller and upright. And I'm walking past people and they're looking at me, and there's, in Nuremberg, there's a lot of Turkish people. So Turkish people were watching me, and, and I went, got my pictures taken, and I remember walking into the passport place, and the woman looked at me and, took the pictures, and then coming back to my apartment, I remember a policy enforcer, a police officer, stopped somebody on the road, and they were talking, and their eyes just got big when I walked past. And I didn't look directly in the direction of the officer, but like I saw him following me with his eyes. And so that was a really special moment. And truth be told, every single time I wear my fez, there's a calmness that comes over me. And I feel like it's supposed to be there.
When did I realize that this information was the truth? I don't know if I could say that there was a defining moment. I feel fortunate that, like I said, I grew up with a freedom to seek different spiritual paths or schools of thought, and So the information always resonated with me. Like I said, from 2008, starting to look up Noble Drew Ali, and everything from there. I mean, I always did my due diligence, and I suppose there was a moment where I stopped being academically skeptical. I stopped being, I stopped analyzing it to verify it, you know what I mean? And I started to add on to the research that I had done in order to verify for myself. When that point was, maybe, maybe a year or so in, it became more, okay, now let me share the information, let me grow on the information, let me expand on it. Because so far, all of it, what I have so far is true. When you look up facts, you get facts. When you look up, facts, you get truth.
It was one particular incident that I had a few, because being, like I said, I was in prison. So if you know about 13, you know that slavery never ended. So the system feeds off people like myself after going through it. When you go through it, they feed off you, like, of you going back in and just being, that circle. So the thing about the information is that it sets you free of that. And for other Moors who get into the science and are active, they didn't have to go through what I went through, but I had to go through it extra because I was actually deemed a property of theirs. So me trying to move and get away from their hold and the grasp on my whole being and life was a battle, So like there's a few times, I got into it with highwaymen and whatnot and got charges and whatnot, but I always come out and I'm going to be honest with you, I've yet to go to kangaroo court and lose a case. And that's not something I did before when I would have lawyers. It's either plea or just lose, you know what I mean? But the science, like I said, the example I could give you is, I was coming from court one day and there's a politician named Tim Hudak in, Ontario, Canada, Misnomer, Canada. And I just happened to jump on the train and I had my fez on. And I recognized him and we struck up a conversation and, I introduced myself as Landry Demore. And he's like, oh, I've always wanted to go to Morocco. So, and I looked at him and it just so happened he was on, this conversation lasted like 2 train stops, and the next train stop he was getting off at, the conversation ended this way where he said, you've always wanted to go to Morocco, but, and I looked at him and I was like, as the doors were opening, I'm like, well, this is Morocco, you're already in Morocco. And he looked at me and kind of whispered, and he said, I know, and left, and the door closed. And little instances like that, and he's a pale-skinned European man, and it's been said, Noble Drew Ali said it, I'll make the Europeans tell the truth. And it's crazy. So usually the dark-skinned people that have issues with it, quote-unquote black people, Europeans have no issues with this information, most of them anyways, so, yeah.
It's sort of like it's kind of not like coming to a realization. It's almost like in some ways the Moorish movement almost felt like home platform. Almost like it gave me a platform of who I was inside. It's kind of like. I think it was more of a surprise in a kind of a sense, a surprise sense of satisfaction. Like when you grow up and you have certain thoughts or certain feelings that you hide or suppress, and then you get in an atmosphere that you feel that they're freed. That's sort of like how I felt. So it was almost like coming home. So it wasn't in my feeling an awakening, in so much it was simply a door opening to something that I already knew. Do you understand? Inside. And was able to let out other things that I didn't necessarily talk loosely about, so that people would think you were out to lunch type stuff. You understand what I'm saying?
When did I realize this information was the truth? I've always known that it's the truth. I just wasn't always able to articulate what the problem was. You know what I mean? We were brought up being black and proud. So even then we knew something wasn't quite right, right? When you look at everyone else, they don't go by a color, they go by a nationality. But we keep going by these different colors and by these different labels, etc. So in a way, I'd always known that it wasn't quite right. But there was an epiphany once. I remember we were having classes back around 2011, when we were having the classes on Bathurst, and there'd be chairs for people to sit on. And one of the things that was always kind of reiterated was the fact that the Prophet said, if you don't do anything else, declare your nationality. And I'd been coming to class for a while then, but I kept wondering what's so important about declaring your nationality. And something told me to get up off the chairs and to go sit down on the floor in the back. So I did that. And it's almost as though there was a grounding effect in sitting down on the floor. And all of a sudden it was like an aha moment, an epiphany, where declaring your nationality is important. It's imperative, actually. From the time I declared my nationality, things have changed in my life for the better, 100%. You think differently, you act differently, you do differently, you do better, you want better. Not just for yourself, but for your family and for your nation. It's a whole different thing, you just don't, it changes you. So I've always known things weren't right. I've always from the time I started understanding and going to classes, I always knew that this was the truth and that these were the things we were supposed to be doing. But it was that day that one piece of the puzzle became crystal clear.
Again, that Friday afternoon, 1993 in October, Taj, came into the barbershop, Jimmy's Barbershop at Camden, New Jersey, as though I was introduced to it a year prior to meeting Taj, but it wasn't. Taj really brought it home at the barbershop, and of course, at my attending the class that evening, it gave me more clarity. Taj would, at that time, he spent a lot of time in talking about the obverse and reverse on the back of the Federal Reserve note, and that really clicked for me. And I've taught that to thousands of people. I pulled out a Federal Reserve note countless of times in teaching that lesson. So that's when it really, really hit home for me.
When I first heard it, I said, we were told we were Moors, and what are Moors about, and why we are home. We didn't come from Africa, even though my family tree is really, really mixed up. That we were always here. That's when I felt it, like I said, when I was turned off and said, oh no, well, tried to turn me off and say we're not Moors. I said, how could we already be here? And now you're telling me we wasn't here, and now we're not. I knew it was my knowing self. I call it my knowing self. Knew that what I heard was the truth, and I had to, take it further.
What do I have to say to my peers and the generation that follows them? When it comes to Moorish nationality, this is actually a right that we have at birth. So this is not something to that would just put you on something just because. Like, this is actually something that's yours, right? We know that we've been conditioned to think that we're black, Africans, whatever it is. The reality is that nationality is the order of the day. And if you check the record, every single individual on the planet has a nationality. So for people who are my peers that know me, that we used to do whatever together, we came up out of that into the know thyself together, you know what I mean? Came out of that into other things together, you know what I mean? You should recognize that, yo, it's me. I'm the same dude so if I'm trying to put you onto something and it's beneficial, you should, you know what I mean, consider it. And for the young ones who are coming up behind, don't let anybody tell you that you're an adjective or you're a continent. Everybody on the planet has a nationality. So if you're true and sincere about who you are and knowing who you are, then you would consider nationality, birthrights, UN declarations of rights, and things relative to securing your rights, because the time is going to come when people are really not going to have any. And there's not going to be anywhere that they can get these rights from unless it's within.
My concept is always one for all and all for one. Like, so what I would say to them is that no one's forcing you to do anything. But if it is to be, and Allah wills it, which He does, then you'll find your place wherever it's supposed to be. Right? 'Cause there's many people I told about this, and the ones who are supposed to gravitate to it. So what I'm going to tell them is that be yourself, be true to yourself, seek and find knowledge. And if you're sincere in what you're doing, the ancestors will guide you, and they'll show you what you need to be shown. And if you're supposed to reclaim your nationality and realize you're not Negro, black, and color, and be the more that you're supposed to be, then so be it. If you're not, then you're not. Because you can't save anybody. I could only save myself. I could assist in the freeing of minds. But and trust me, you're gonna hear it on Iron Sheik 7 on the Damnation track. Anonymous, you'll hear what I said. I said, we led them to the water, made them drink, and you're still mad. Right? You could lead them to water, but you can't make them drink. But we actually made you drink. You got the food, you got the jewels and the wisdom. And you're still confused, you still don't know, you're still indecisive, you still can't make a decision. Then there's nothing that I can tell you. There's nothing for me to tell you. You'll just have to see. And hopefully you're around still in the physical and conscious enough that when things manifest, you'll see it for yourself.
What do I have to say to my peers in the generation that follows them? Noble Drew Ali loves you. Noble Drew Ali loves people. He loves humanity. I don't want to avoid making comparisons, but I don't think anyone would doubt that Mother Teresa loved humanity. Princess Diana loved humanity. And the average person wouldn't say, I love humanity just as much, and then go about their life the same way, doing what they do, going to work, coming home, etc. That doesn't mean that we all don't have that love in our heart for our fellow people, but these people expressed it, and they lived it. And long or short lives, they put their entire life into it. Noble Drew Ali put his entire life into showing his love for humanity. And for my Moorish American peers, you know, conscious or unconscious, Noble Drew Ali was one of your brothers. And he loved you, and the time that he came to prepare us for is here.
What I tell them all the time, open a book up. Since we have modern technology, listen to a YouTube. I send people YouTube all day long. It might be one word that I hear that somebody asked me a question, and I'm saying, just listen to it. Listen and decide for yourself. Just, and my little people, I'm all about my little people. My grands, I have to get all of this so that they don't have to be sitting here, not sitting, staying wherever, years from now, not being comfortable with being in the skin that they're in and walking on our own land.
In the last 10 years since I've been out, you know, this April makes it actually 10 years since I've been out of prison, you know. Been to prison too as well, as far as declaring my nationality as a Moorish American. It's been liberating and, you know, and scary in a good way too, you know. And if you decide to follow that yellow brick road and you get to find out what's behind those curtains, you'll be shocked. And I know for some, you know, the fear is there to deter you from doing this, because, you know, it's your birthright, and they do everything to stop you from getting to that. And like I said, with my own story. But what I have to say is, seek the truth. Like, I've always been a seeker of the truth, you know. Like I said, if I was in prison, it's not like I switched up in any way. I studied myself more than anything. And ironically, in Moorish science, Noble Drew Ali talks about it. Study, and when you're done study yourself. You know what I mean? And then study some more. So, if you're a studious person, this is, you'll be fine, you know. And if it's not for you, if you don't gravitate towards it, it's okay. It's not for everybody, you know. It's been said, many are called, but few have chosen. And yeah, I've chose this life, Moorish life.
Be true. Be wary of hypocrisy, whether from yourself or others. And if you're not willing to stand for the truth, don't speak at all. And nature will take care of the rest.
What do I have to say to my peers and the generation that follows them? I would definitely say research Moorish history for sure. Research that as just, I would say just research it as curiosity and see where it takes you, but research it deeply and talk to people that are knowledgeable if you have questions. I would also say be yourself no matter what. Growing up, a lot of times there's a lot of peer pressures. You want to fit into different groups. And a lot of the feelings that you have when you're younger, you may feel that nobody can relate to you because you are on a different thought process or wavelength than they are, and you feel strange. There's a reason for that, and you normally will be validated when you're older. So be yourself. Don't be afraid to be yourself. It's easier said than done in your teenage years, obviously. But being yourself, surround yourself with people that accept you for who you are. And whatever you're feeling, study those feelings, look into that. Whatever ideas you have, look into that, and don't shun them, don't disregard them. Definitely look into that. Be yourself.
What do I have to say to my peers and the generations that follow them? I say to my peers that truth can't be ran from. You can try to ignore the truth. You can try to not accept the truth, but truth is. And when you hear the truth, you know the truth. You might not want to accept the truth and you might not like the truth, but truth just is. So at a certain part of somebody's life, a certain space and time, they may not be ready for truth. And they might not want to accept truth. But when you hear it, you know it. So what I say to my peers is this. Take whatever information you can get, whether it's from me, whether it's from the next one or the third one, and keep what you can and discard the rest. Learn to eat the fish and spit out the bones. If somebody's saying something to you that doesn't resonate with you, don't argue with them, don't fight with them. Just hear what they're saying, take what you can get from it and discard the rest. Don't totally dismiss a thing until you've researched the thing. I say again, don't totally dismiss a thing until you've researched the thing. Don't say to me, oh, I can't believe that, because truth and belief are two totally different subjects. You believe something because you don't know it to be true. You have to have faith that it's true. But if you research something and you find out that it's the truth, the only thing you have two options. You can either embrace the truth or you can run from the truth. So for the youth coming up and for my peers that are here today, when you hear truth, embrace truth and don't run from it.
We have to know who we are. It's really, really, really important for us to know who we are. You know, I didn't know who I was in terms of my nationality. I didn't know who I was in order to teach my children about nationality. And now that I'm a grandmother, I'm making darn sure that my grandchildren know who they are. You know, it's really important for us to know. People operate from where they think they come from. I don't know if I put that quite right, but with this whole business about us coming over on a slave ship, you look at your ancestry as though it was something that was just defeated. You know what I mean? A whole bunch of people that came over here as a defeated people, and that's all there is to it. We don't have anything great about who we were, etc., etc. Now, the funny thing is here's the thing. They claim in the history books that there were native Indian people here when they came, right? In the 1500s or whatever. But then, check this out. If these people were already here, why the heck are you going to get on a boat several times, apparently, over quite a few hundred years, and keep going way across the ocean to bring other people here to enslave? That doesn't make any sense. Start looking at things analytically. Don't just believe everything that you read, because they're not going to tell you the truth. They don't tell us the truth. They've never told us the truth. They don't tell us. All the institutions are slanted against us. They don't tell us the truth about who we are. They don't. And we're talking education, we're talking religion, we're talking history, we're talking medicine. Why do you think we're in the state we're in? Come on. Don't take everything at face value. Always question everything. Always question us, too. So that when we tell you something, you say, I want to see the proof. Let us show you the proof. And study, 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 like the prophet said. And when you're done studying, study yourself.
That this Moorish National Divine Movement is our economic bloodline. It is the key for ourselves, our progeny. This is that we definitely need the support of the young generation, so that we can really move this movement forward. You know, so it can really gain root take root and begin to effectuate change. Right now, I don't believe that we can effectuate change, political, economic, social change. You know, so this is what I would offer, that we get involved, and that it takes really having an understanding of what this Moorish movement really is, and understanding that it is the economic, political, social key to our progeny and our destiny.
Of the 5 attributes, which one embodies your essence?
Truth, 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 and truth. It's like know the truth, and not the truth will set you free, you are free. Because the truth comes, you can feel it. I'm a very high vibrational person, and I feel it. If somebody tell me something that don't, I'll listen, but I know it's true. I feel for the truth.
Islam.
Islam.
Out of the 5 attributes, which attribute best describes my essence? Or embodies my essence? Yeah, I was saying truth, because I've always been somebody seeking knowledge, especially when I came into knowledge of self. It was a constant battle, clearing the mind of all the lies and making sure the right information is in there, clearing the mind of all the lies, putting the right information in there, coming to realize that all the things that I was studying, well, not all, but majority of the things that I was studying with a Negro, Black, African mindset was really lies. And then I had to go through all the stuff over again, and it was such a good feeling to know that I finally had the truth, you know. But I think truth is really that thing that makes me stay here and do this, because I know that it resonates with truth.
I would say love. I am driven by that. My motivation, my drive, the time I spent researching, the hours I put in traveling and teaching, it's love. That is a quality. Juali said, Moors need to learn to love instead of hate. So I am driven by that love for our people, and that great desire to see them free.
I don't know if there's any one in particular. I really don't think so. I don't even know if they can be compartmentalized like that. I think each one kind of leans on the other 4. I would like to think that I am a peaceful person. I like peace. I don't like a whole lot of, antagonism. It's not me. However, I also like to think that I'm about love as well, because I think without love, we really don't have a leg to stand on. And when I say love, there's all different types of love. You can love someone without even knowing who they are. You can love someone without liking them or liking their behavior. So the Prophet taught us we should love, you know what I mean? So that's something that I strive for anyway, is to love, and love everyone. Here comes my daughter. Love, truth. Truth, it's something that I would like to be a truthful person, Love, truth, peace, freedom. Well, freedom is beautiful. We should all be free, right? Anyone on this planet should be free. And justice, we should all have, it would be lovely if we lived in a just world, If we did, things would be lovely. Very beautiful for everybody. But I don't know which one in particular I can say is my essence. Perhaps that's something that someone else can tell me about myself. I don't know.
Out of the 5 attributes of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, I would have to say love. Love embodies truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Like I said a second ago, I genuinely have love for my people. I'm willing to put my life on the line to uplift fallen humanity, to go from place to place, travel from this place to that place, this territory to that territory, to not so much teach, I like to say awaken, because this information is already in us. All we have to do is embrace it and let it come out. So out of the 5 attributes, love definitely embodies my essence. It's the love of my people. It's the love of the generations coming behind me. Coming behind me. And it's the love of the work that our ancestors laid down that forces me to continue to want to spread every bit of me that I can. So definitely love.
Well, for myself, what I know, love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, they are, it's like Voltron, they stand together. But for me, it'd have to be justice and truth. You know, because I feel like justice and truth kind of, they're a couple, you know? They're Siamese twins, yin and yang. I mean, it's important, like I told you, I'm a seeker of the truth, you know? And once you know the truth, you have to serve justice. And that's the bottom line for me, you know? I got love for the people, you know what I mean? But I also understand that there are things when you're in the front of the pack, there's things that you might have to do that some people behind you might not agree with. And this is where the justice and truth comes in, because sometimes people are misinformed, you know? So I'm always for the justice and truth of things.
I would say all of them. Because growing up and still now, there's a genuine love that I have for humanity. Like, I genuinely want everybody to have whatever they want, to be happy, at all times. So, and I want everybody to feel that sense of love for humanity as well. And growing up, I never liked to see children being picked on. I always used to side with the underdog, who was being picked on and stuff. I never stood for that, and I never really liked that. So there's the love, there's the justice. The truth aspect is, for one, I'm all about common sense. And to me, truth is common sense. Truth is mathematical. Truth is what the universe runs on. And with me growing up and Christianity not making sense, as well as me not growing up with my mother, I always wanted to know the truth of why she left. I always wanted to know the truth behind religion and so on. So truth was always important to me. Peace, once again, peace to me goes with love. And I like harmony for harmony's sake. There's some people that like the challenge of conflict to get to harmony or peace. I'm just about peace. Just give me peace and tranquility and let me go and meditate and and design. And I want that for everybody, really. And the freedom, that's really interesting as well, because growing up, I always used to say, I want to do whatever I want, whenever I want, however I want, with me and my family. And in order to accomplish that, you need complete freedom. So I don't want to be able to go anywhere and somebody say, I can't do this, I can't go there, or I can't do this, or whatever. Complete freedom. And then once again, the justice was just fairness. I was able at a very early age to be completely fair, even if the outcome would not favor what I wanted. So if I had a dispute with somebody, and whatever it was, the fair thing was for them the other person to get whatever, and I go without, if that was a fair thing, I was able to handle that, and I would always do that. So I would say all 5 attributes.
Out of the 5 attributes, which one embodies my essence? Love, truth, peace, freedom, or justice? I mean, I can't put anything above love. But next to that, freedom. You know, yeah. Freedom for me isn't just physically being free. Freedom is mentally, especially, and knowing that, you know, your mental faculties are gifts from the Most High, gifts that no other animal has, and then gifts that not even an angel can use the way you can use. So if you don't think freely, then you're giving your gift to somebody else to use, but it was given to you directly. So my brain power was given to me. I shouldn't give it to somebody else if I'm being forced or influenced to think in a non-free way in any way. As soon as there's an influence to not think freely, that's that's an insult against freedom.
Out of the 5 attributes, which ones embody my essence? It has to be love, because that's why I think that's the first principle. Because love, in everything, love, it encompasses love. Truth, right? And in truth, there has to be trust. And there has to be love involved in that. If you're going to have peace, there has to be love. If you're going to have freedom, there has to be love. If you're going to have justice, there has to be love. So love is the ultimate goal to attain on this plane. Love is everything. Love is a lot, right? And if we went with that one principle and that one universal law of love, then everything else will fall into line. And we'll be in alignment with the universe again.
Probably justice, although love is primal with me.